We're going to be studying, I know, most of the time stars in deep space, but we'll start, for some reason, we're going to start with our star, the sun. And I was going to focus today on solar outreach, and I think you'll be a little surprised at the sort of the variety of things that we come up with to promote the sun and our science. So let's just have some fun with it. And I'll try to keep you awake. I know it's 9 in the morning. It's a little tough. So I did grow up in Hatboro. I know a lot of you are from Pennsylvania. Maybe all of you are now, anyhow. So that's outside Philadelphia. And so I feel like I'm a Pennsylvanian at heart. SOHO is the older science mission. I don't know, probably most of you have heard of that one. It's still flying. It launched in '95, studying the sun with 12 instruments. It's somewhat in retirement now because SDO has taken its place with some better instruments in some instances, but there are other instruments on SOHO that were not replaced by anything yet, so they're still operational. Stereo is sort of the middle mission that came along later. I'm trying to remember what date it launched. I should know this. I think around 2005, 2006. Has 2 spacecraft studying the sun. One, actually, they're almost diametrically opposed, so as of last year, we were able to see the entire sun for the first time. And it's going to continue that way for about the next 7 years as the spacecraft continue to move behind the sun, continue on, and meantime, we have SDO looking at the sun from the Earthward's point of view. So we've got the sun covered. We got it covered. It can't hide anything now. We're good. So those are the 3 missions that I've been working with. Let's bring you right up to speed on what's going on these days. Enterprise moved from Dulles to New York. There it is. Spaceship Enterprise. Now, I didn't do that, but that's a really nice Photoshop job. So that's happening. Actually, it is going to open up in a museum. The Intrepid Aircraft Carrier is a museum in New York, and that will be its permanent home for the Enterprise. So NASA will have an event celebrating that towards the end of July. All right, here's a picture of an explosion on the sun. That would be the kind of thing we would see when we would see something like this. We go, "Oh, that's cool." So my job is to catch these things almost as soon as they happen, and to get it out to the world as quickly as I can. And that usually involves a movie. So let's. Hopefully the movie will play. Here we go. Oh, with the word text on it. Okay. One more click, maybe? There we go. Put it in motion. So you see, of course, we're looking at the whole sun, so we don't get to see too far off the limb. But look at that stuff rushing in, the plasma rushing back into the sun. That's what made this sort of a novel and unique visual. I mean, we've seen material flow back into the sun before or after a coronal mass ejection, but not as much and for as long. So it was sort of a failed eruption in some sense. Now, if I showed you a picture of the broader corona, you'd see that, yeah, a whole bunch of material went out into space, but a lot of it floated back in, and that was kind of fun. So that's how we start. Let's look at some people interacting with the sun. Maybe you've seen this before. If not, you can close your. I mean, if you have, you can close your eyes for a minute. Supportive hold, yes. Pretty clever photography here. Pinching the sun. You can do this too. I mean, this is, just go out with your camera one day and see what you can do. I don't know what filters or settings they used. And that's my favorite. All right, so that was that group. This is there's the sun. Looks like on a desert somewhere. But anybody know where this one was taken? Yes, sir. Mars. That's right. This is the sun from Mars. Who would have thought when we were growing up, or at least even when the younger people were growing up, that we would have pictures on Mars of the sun, for instance. I mean, it was like that would have been futuristic when I was a youngster. But there it is. And it's a little bit smaller than we would see from Earth, and that's because it's further away, of course. This is neat. That's the reflection of the sun on Saturn's rings. So I thought that was kind of just nifty and cool and stuff. Okay, here we go. This was from an event from April 16th. This is just preliminary stuff to get you interested in the sun and all. This was from stereo. And we're going to see a prominence eruption. There it goes. Then it feathers out and blows away. This was one of our better prominence eruptions. And you'll notice there's a lot of pixelation going on right at the edge of the corona. That is, of course, artifact based on the compression algorithms they use when they process these frames. We were never, we were never happy with the people that came up with that scheme to compress it that way because, yes, things on the surface of the sun are very clear, but once you get out towards the corona, they start to pixelate. It's never quite as much fun. Okay, so one thing we do, I do and others with the sun, is respond to media requests. I worked with the National Geographic staff to select that image for their cover, which just came out, this current edition, actually. And that was a lot of fun. They asked for about, oh, I don't know, I guess 10. And I gave them 10, and then they narrowed it down to about 3. They made the final decision, but and then they wanted other versions of it, the full disc and the part of the disc and different resolutions. And then apparently they do different covers in different countries, so that somebody from Japan wanted actually a different picture, so we gave them that, and that was fun. But as I was thinking about this slide, we don't just respond to media requests. A lot of times we push things out to them. If there's an event like that first eruption you saw, and we thought it was really cool, maybe not scientifically important, but just visual, the Public Affairs Office at Goddard has a whole, about 600 media list of stuff. They send out faxes or they send out broadcast messages saying, hey, we have something really cool here. You might want to take a look at it, and here's where it is, that kind of thing. Other times we'll just post it immediately on the NASA website as opposed to, say, the SDO website, because who goes to the SDO website that often? The media doesn't. And in the world of digital world, as things are now, which are much different than when I started 15 years ago, everybody and his brother sees this stuff about the same time I do. So very commonly, spaceweather.com already has something posted by the time I get to work about what happened the night before, or even during the day. Sometimes I'll go to Facebook to find out what people are covering, because I'm always watching what's going on. So it's kind of interesting. We aren't always the first with the story, that's for sure. What I try to do is to broadcast and to feature our stuff is this weekly pick that we do, one for Soho and Stereo, and then one for SDO on their websites. And this has sort of been a great thing that's worked out. It started about 2001. We put some high-res things out there. I also send it out through channels to about 500 museums. It gets featured at through 2 other networks. So that works pretty well, and it becomes our archive. So if something happened on the sun, let's say this week, and I don't feature it, it probably gets lost in the shuffle of everything else, because it's just frames and there's no movie involved, and there's no way to get back to it unless you knew exactly when it happened. So this sort of is how we build up our archive of neat stuff and our highlights. This is an example of one from about 2 weeks ago. Just a close-up of the neat sunspots. These are large sunspots. Each one's about 3 times the size of Earth. Your average sunspot's about one Earth in diameter. And so it was a neat, and this had produced a lot of solar storms as it rotated across the sun. I'd say about, well, 10 flares and 3 or 4 or 5 coronal mass ejections. That's a lot. And the transit of Venus, of course, was our latest and greatest best story, and SDO had the best seat in town. And there's a compilation of frames showing it going across the sun. This took about 6 hours, the entire transit. We had 5 to 7 million visitors to look at these movies and others, and we had a special site set up, and that was a lot of work. Apparently, we started that about a year before the transit. We started planning for those special operations that they had to do. They'd write scripts and do different kinds of observations and all that stuff. This was my favorite event from SDO, I think. This is a flare and a coronal mass ejection. We're talking this is maybe a couple hours. Look at the stuff falling back into the sun, hitting it and making these nice little splashes. And I should point out probably, if you're not familiar with solar imagery, and you're probably not intimately anyhow, the level of detail you see here has never ever been seen before. This is absolutely new, brand new, cutting edge science. It's twice as good as stereo could do. It's 4 times as good as Soho could do. So there's a nice progression. But not only the size is so much bigger, the frequency of images is totally different. We take an image every 10 seconds with each instrument. The best stereo can do is about 3 to 5 minutes, and same for Soho. And Soho typically we do every 15 minutes an image. So we're talking a whole new step forward in terms of frequency. So I have a lot of options when I go to make movies. And the way these movies get made, you probably know this, but it's just individual pictures. So let's say we have pictures every 10 seconds. Well, things don't happen generally that fast, though occasionally we do need to go down to the 10-second level. I usually use a frame about every 3 minutes or so to make like a movie like this. This is probably every maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes, something like that. So then you just take, I grab them off the web, I put them into QuickTime because they're numbered, that understands that these are in this sequence, and then I export them as different formats. And if I have to crop them, I use another program to move in, closer or change the view or something like that. So in terms of support for informal education, probably the main thing that we do is we send out materials such as posters, CDs, and so forth to people doing astronomy outreach. And sometimes that includes solar, not always, but it's a great way, I have learned, to get material out into the public, because a lot of people that go to these kinds of events like star parties and stuff are teachers, or they're involved with a club that does go into schools, that goes into science centers and gives presentations and talks, or 4-H clubs or Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and stuff. So it's sort of like my way of reaching out to those people without having to go out there myself and do it. So here the picture on the left shows us we were assembling packages. This is some years ago for the first transit of Venus, and to support various countries, actually. That was, all those were going overseas, that particular group. And of course we go to, I sometimes do go to those events and hand out materials. That's the other picture. But, and there's a Space Weather Center. I don't really saw it yet at the Visitor Center. It's quite large. We were involved deeply in the design and setup of that's getting older now. It's about 10 years old. Okay, other things. Facebook, we have 2 sites on Facebook called NASA SDO and Camilla SDO for outreach through that. The guy who runs that is very, very active. And what is kind of fun is you see me there holding our mascot, the chicken, the rubber chicken, somehow has become our mascot. And the guy who actually manages our chicken, called Camilla, does a wonderful job of making Camilla into like a little chicken. He talks as if he's the chicken on Twitter, and he does fabulous stuff. He meets astronauts. In his real job, he's like an engineer or an auditor or something, but he does an awful lot. And he has sort of a great following from youngsters who think, oh, a rubber chicken, that's pretty fun. And he said even at booths, when there are conferences, kids will come up right away because there's a rubber chicken sitting there and they want to know about it. And it wears a space suit and stuff. So it really has worked out very well. There's a Twitter account whose hashtag I don't even remember. I don't use Twitter, but it's another way of putting stuff out there. And the woman with the SEO staff who manages that, I say, hey, there's a neat event. You might want to tell your Twitter followers. And she goes and does that. And it's another way of getting the word out. We go to a whole variety of conferences. WonderCon was probably the strangest one. That's like sci-fi. It's basically a sci-fi kind of conference, and they were thrilled that we were there. And of course, the New York thing coming up there at the end of the month. Here's an example of 2 happy kids with one of our products. I thought the twins. It was kind of cute. Okay, some of the products. You've seen some of these before. Lenticulars or the motion cards. If you were doing solar this year, you see I'd bring all that along. But since you're doing stars, okay, we'll do without. But we have posters, stickers, brochures. Of course, we have solar viewing glasses, which were immensely popular for the transit of Venus. Cosmic Collisions DVD. Cosmic Collisions, you may know, is a planetarium show that's been shown around the country. Still is, I think. It was created by the American Museum of Natural History with NASA support. Fabulous 22-minute program about things colliding in space. Kids like it because it has collisions, you know, and crashing and, you know, destruction. But it was narrated by, who was that? Robert Redford, yeah, he narrated it. And it's really slickly done. I do have copies if Evelina maybe can come over and get some and we can get them to you. Even if you aren't doing sun, it's still kind of cool. It's mostly about stars, actually. The sun's a minor player in that particular production. But we do give away copies of that. Print products, here's one of my favorite, the Aurora poster that we did some years ago. We still have a few left. There's the Transit Venus poster that was pretty well popular during the transit. Other things are other posters. We have stereo because it sort of was 3D for a little while. We went deeply into 3D. We have a 3D poster, 3D litho, 3D glasses, things like that. We have another DVD called The Sun, the Earth, and Near Earth Space. That's a book, actually, a NASA-produced, published book on DVD. Very nicely done. It's probably a high school audience, I'd say. It's not quite it's not an educator's book, but if you want to know more about that stuff, it's very nicely done with pictures and all that. So here's what I'm working on these days. Here's a new lenticular. Again, it's a motion card. You know, things move with as you move your hand, and this is how it looks if you do it step by step. So it's showing a coronal mass ejection and how it creates the aurora here at Earth. It's about, I think it's 7 frames worth of motion. You can get up to 10, but somehow when I was working on it, you always want to have a hold at the beginning and a hold at the end. So that's like 2 frames and 2 frames, so now we're up to 9. And 10's the limit, so it just worked out with 9 for me this time. Lenticulars are fun. They're not that expensive to produce, about 35 cents a piece at the volume that we do, which goes about 50,000. And I can get rid of 50,000 in a year, no problem. This is the new lenticular. These are all in draft, by the way. These are not out yet. But here's another lenticular. I'm trying to show that you can see the sun in different wavelengths, and they show different features, and sunspots actually become these magnetic-looking, looping regions when you go through. Let me go through that one again. There's the sunspots, and there should be a correlation between the sunspots and where we see these big loops. And the back of it would explain that this is what people are seeing. Another way to reach people is this show I created called The Sun is Art. That's an exhibit of about 3 feet by 3 feet images from SDO. I treat them creatively, I think. And it was started at the Maryland Science Center. Now it's out at the Chabot Science Center. And it's online as well. Here's some samples from that. This is with the text caption. Most of those, they all have captions. 7 of them have interaction features where we have a QR code and you can scan it with your iPhone and go to the movie that was associated with that event. That's kind of fun. So here I'm just trying to show the variety of wavelengths, trying to make it look arty. There's the man in the sun, the old man in the sun. We have this online. I didn't add this to the show. This is fun though. If you want to go to the SDO site, you'll find it in the gallery. And we call it the old man in the sun. And we go through all the wavelengths, and as you go through the wavelengths, the face sort of emerges. It's kind of neat the way it looks. And just playing with color and reflections, and this is a composite. And this is truly photoshopped, but I thought it made the effect a little bit better. And this is just artsy. Just sort of patterns and swirls, but they're all based on actual, images from the spacecraft. Okay, so something else I get to do now and then is to develop a graphic. A guy came to me 2 weeks ago and said, hey, can you show the rockets going up and coming down? And they do relate to the sun because the sounding rockets do calibrations for some of the instruments somehow. I don't know how that works. So I developed that for him. And when we had a contest for Soho, I made a sort of a poster kind of thing to show that. This was an image I did many years ago, actually. Now they're selling it on T-shirts in some store somewhere online called Zazzle.com, I think it is. And of course, they didn't contact me and they didn't give me any credit and whatnot. But that's actually fair because it's not my image; it's NASA's image, and NASA isn't going to go after these guys for using. Actually, anything we do is pretty much in the public domain. But I just thought it was fun. Okay, so in terms of multimedia, another aspect of how we do outreach. Of course, I created a movie for the Air and Space Museum to show off SDO, and that's still playing down there as far as I know on just a looping big screen. And then people who need something for there's a space weather thing going on in India and this later in a month. They said we need to show off this kind of stuff, so I created a video of various clips and stills and so forth. And we go to NASA Day on the Hill where we meet with congressmen and their staff and show off what we do. NASA, not just us, but we're a piece of that. And Maryland has an open house every year, celebrate Goddard, we have to show movies and all that kind of stuff. And so that's fun. I always enjoy doing that. In terms of formal education, well, we do DLNs occasionally. I have a program that I've been working with the schools in the Scranton area now for about 11 years where they do projects based on our spacecraft. School visits occasionally, not too often. DLNs work out a lot easier. And we do have a full-time educator on the SCO staff who her whole job is formal education, of course. But she's helped coordinate a book, an elementary level book, about a kid who explores the sun. She goes to schools at least 2 or 3 days a week in the local area. And occasionally I develop things for her, like an activity one time, and other times she wanted a video to show certain aspects of things. And yeah, so we do that too. I mentioned before we go to conferences, NSTA and Pennsylvania State Teachers Association I've gone to for 5 or 6 years. Lately I haven't been. Of course, we had the Discovery arrival at Dulles. This is me. I gave a talk at the Northeast Astronomy Forum this April or March or April was. I guess it was April. And things like that. Here's my kids. I got 4 of them. This was at my son's 30th birthday, just last year. There's my dog. I'm throwing in the kitchen sink now, CJ. Okay, now we can move right on to questions and anything you might want to ask about related to either outreach or the sun or you can take a nap. I don't know. What? I don't know what time it is. It's about 9:30 maybe. Yeah. Or I could just I could show you that. Oh, I do want to mention before we have questions, apps. There are several solar apps out there, and I noticed a lot of you have iPads and iPhones. My favorite one is called the 3D Sun, 3D space sun, I believe. And there's several others out there. If you just Google app search on NASA Sun, you'll find them. But I like the 3D one. The content is not as wide and as deep as some of the others about the sun. But what it does do is push out to you an alert that something's cool is happening. And if you go, so when you turn on your machine, your device, maybe it just comes to you. I don't have an iPhone, but maybe it just, if it's on, it comes to you. And you can decide to go there or not. But if you go there, it'll say, oh, there's a really good chance of aurora tonight because that solar storm that happened 2 days ago is now hitting Earth. And it'll tell you where you can see it and what chance of you getting it. I mean, that's sort of the most practical application. But also, if there's just a neat event of some kind, let's say a transit or something, he'll push that out. And he doesn't overdo it. I think he maybe pushes once a week on some event or another. So I like that. Some of the others are much more in depth. There's one on space weather that I even have trouble navigating and understanding some of the charts that they show and stuff. It's too much information, I think. So, but I noticed you have that, so that's another avenue of outreach that works pretty well. Okay, so back to questions. If anybody has, there's one, Steve.
Steele, can you talk a little bit about the solar cycle and where we are with prominences and their effect on electromagnetism and GPS systems and all that kind of stuff?
Okay, yeah, sure. In terms of the solar cycle, and as this is very important to our world, there's an 11-year solar cycle caused by the change of the magnetic field. The orientation of the magnetic field of the sun actually reverses itself over those 11 years or so. It's not exact, it's 10 to 12, but it averages to about 11. And we are nearing the peak of activity. And so this is measured mainly by counting sunspots in some scientific way. Sunspots are indicators of intense magnetic activity going on underneath the surface and then emerges through the surface, and they release typically your solar storms, some of which head towards Earth. So this is pretty significant in terms of the sun and people studying the sun and what the effects will be. So we are about a year or so estimated from sort of the peak period, so-called solar maximum of activity. So over the last maybe 4 years ago, we were dying in a sense because there was nothing going on in the sun. It was blank, there were no sunspots, there were no solar storms, it was like boring. And it was really a challenge to come up with a pick of the week each week of something minorly interesting. Anyway, so how does this affect us here at Earth? Well, solar storms create this intense, not always intense, but sometimes fairly intense wave of magnetic charge that comes and hits our magnetic field. And sometimes this energy gets caught up in the back side, the magneto-tail of our magnetic field. And then because it's like twisting a rubber band, when it gets so taut, it snaps and all the energy rushes into the Earth and we see aurora, which is very nice. The real impact, though, is not just pretty lights, but we have some electrical issues, communications get disrupted, GPS systems can get thrown off by quite a margin, because sometimes they, for us, you and I navigating a street, we may not notice it, but a lot of companies use GPS for very precise measurements, and they can be off by 10 feet or more. Communications. Airplanes sometimes have to change their routes over the North Pole because of the radiation associated with these storms, and that happens, pretty often, and it costs them a lot of money. And occasionally satellites get fried by the charge, the static charge that builds up on them and disrupts them, and sometimes they recover and sometimes they don't. The Air Force once told us that they wouldn't tell us how many spacecraft they'd lost due to solar storms. And it's sort of shame on them in a sense. I mean, if you build a spacecraft without enough shielding, these things are going to happen. So, you'd think at some point they'd build them a little more robustly, and maybe they have. But yeah. And of course, publicly we know that many spacecraft have gone south due to these solar storms. So that's, we're looking forward to it. It's a lot more fun to see activity and loops and sunspots and these eruptions. The main eruption that we're concerned about the most here at Earth is the coronal mass ejections, and they happen almost every day, but they're so small we can barely notice them. But it's the big ones, and I'd say there's about 4 or 5 or 6 big ones during the peak of the year or so of the maximum that would really maybe cause some disruptions here at Earth. Flares are another kind of solar storm that obviously are more frequent now that we're near solar maximum, but they don't carry as much oomph, they don't have as much plasma associated with them. What they do have is radiation. So people in space are very concerned about those. Astronauts in particular. In 1972 we had astronauts on the moon in July. In August there was a major solar flare, and the estimates are that they either would have been sickened or died. on the moon due to that radiation storm. Since then, they've well, we haven't been back on the moon that much since then, but if we do go back, there'll certainly be more shielding and better shielding. Even now, the astronauts will not go out on an extravehicular walk if there's radiation from a active solar flare hitting or expected to hit at that time. They travel really fast. They get from the sun to Earth in about 15 minutes. And so there's not a whole lot of warning time, but there is some. Thanks to SDO. Yeah. Anything else? This was a tough way to start your day, I know. Now, is this the first day of your visit?
Yeah.
Oh man, this is a hard way to start then. I mean, you wonder, wow, man, it's going to be like this. No, it'll get better. It'll get better. You'll have a lot more heavy-duty content. I just wanted, they asked me to come in and do the sort of a overview of outreach and how we do it. One thing I was going to mention, I forgot, is I showed you that T-shirt, but all kinds of commercial businesses have been using our images for all kinds of things. Third Eye Blind is a pretty popular music group that they used one of our images for a cover of their album, and actually many groups have, but that was the most popular one. There was a snowboard company that used an image from Soho on their snowboard, and they wrote to us for permission, and we said, yeah, okay, whatever. It's hard to stop them. So I'm sure I'm forgetting there's all kinds of things. Oh, jewelry. I saw a picture that somebody found of jewelry based on SDO imageries of those loops that you saw. So they have this looping kind of gold and other kinds of materials, I think, that they call them solar flare or bracelet or something, I don't know. So there's that, and of course there's posters out there that people sell based on our imagery. And all that's really kind of okay because it's paid with tax dollar money. It's in the public domain, and we do ask that people write to us and say, can we sort of ask nicely for permissions. Many people do, and some don't that we never know about, and a few don't that we do know about, but that's okay. It's out there. It's good stuff. And I didn't mention, but we have worked, of course, with many TV production companies that do these stories on the sun, or at least partly about the sun. And there's a guy in England who did some kind of weird installation that has this big round projector that shows a sun, and then I'm not sure what else, there's something else involved, but maybe where the planets are in relation to it, but he needed, very specific kinds of imagery, and we got it for him, and he was happy. And sometimes people do art projects based on the sun, based using our imagery as sort of what they call installations, as opposed to just a picture on a wall. It's sort of like a room that has different things going on, one of which might be the sun, and pictures of the sun, or movies from the sun, that kind of thing. So it's, you never know where things are going to pop up. Our job is just to sort of make it available. And if people need really, really high res, which we don't make readily available quite on our website, well, you can get an image every 15 minutes at the highest res, which is 5 feet by 5 feet. That's pretty big. But if you zoom into 1/10 of the sun, then you really do need that kind of resolution to keep the sharpness and all. So we handle those kind of requests for people from production companies or TVs, movies, whatever, museums that need the highest res, and yeah, we get it for them. So yeah, that's how it sort of goes. My day is driven by sometimes requests, but not always. I usually have sort of an idea what I'm going to do a given day, and then sometimes it gets thrown out, and I put that aside till the next day and move, get on top of whatever just happened on the sun or something. It's a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy seeing the footage from time to time. The website for SDO is, if you just search on NASA SDO, you'll find it. It's the GSFC site, though, the Goddard Space Flight Center site that has the most recent and up-to-date movies that are most easily accessible. And you can see a movie of what happened over the last 48 hours all the time on the SDO site. which is kind of fun for some people and maybe too much information for others. We have fun with it though. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. Dave, what do you want to tell them?
10-minute break.
Okay, thank you.